Today's video, we will be discussing what things I personally dislike about the war arc in Naruto, and what things I personally felt like could have been added in to make it a little bit more interesting. But first off, the first thing I really disliked was it started off very slow. And overall, it was very long. It's amazing how 2 days of war could have been stretched so far. I felt like they spent a lot of time focusing on some fights in the war that we just couldn't care less about. For example, some of the Cloud Village fights like Kinkaku versus Darui, all of that stuff I didn't care anything about. And even them bringing Asuma back, I would have much more preferred if they personally brought back Fugaku, Sakumo, Jiraiya to battle. Just think a scene with Sakumo and Kakashi post their conversation in Limbo would have been very interesting to watch, as he'd be showing his father that he's living up to his example of not allowing his comrades to die, and Fugaku seeing with his own eyes that Sasuke did survive and how Itachi's plan played out. And with Jiraiya, I would have just loved a scene with him and Tsunade instead of Dan, because we have no attachment to Dan as a viewer. Like, it wasn't really that impactful to see. Whereas if Jiraiya potentially was the one to snap out of the mind control and somehow save Tsunade, that would have been dope. Them having one last proper dialogue with each other post him going off to fight Pain, because there was always that, oh, if he came back, would Tsunade have got with him? That sort of stuff would have been interesting to see for us, the fans. And obviously, of course, have Jiraiya seeing Naruto excel. All of those scenes I would have loved. And also another one, which I'm not thoroughly too set on, but I thought maybe be a nice touch, would be seeing Danzo being brought back to fight Hiruzen, for Danzo to see what his actions ultimately cause. I'll be very interested to see whether he'd stand by his beliefs. Like, would he be that in the darkness that he still would have felt like what he did was the right, or would he have had regrets? I would have been really interested to see how they would display his character in that moment. But overall, these are more wishes that I would have liked to have seen maybe included or showcased. But that stuff aside, the main things I actually dislike that actually happened in the series are the followings. There should have been more deaths. And I mean deaths by main characters, not just fodder characters of random shinobis that we cared nothing about. I'm talking about some of the main cast. It would have given much more weight to the war. It would have felt like any of our main characters could have been killed off at any moment. So personally, I would have said any character that they had no real plans for moving forward post the war, they should have potentially killed them off. For example, my guy not dying was a complete insult to his sacrifice and his memory of the character, because we would have definitely saw his character in such a high regard after that moment if he had died in the battle. But after that, they more or less just have him walking around in a wheelchair and just faffing around in Boruto. Of all the instances in the war, my guy should have died to live up to the jutsu and just the overall build-up it had. Plus, it would have been much more impactful him dying than Neji, because Neji was barely seen throughout most of Shippuden. I'm not going to say Neji dying wasn't impactful at all, but I'm just saying Neji could have still died. I'm just saying more characters could have. I've made a whole video on this separately, speaking about how I think they should have killed off my guy and how the war should have probably ended differently. Feel free to check out that video. But overall, my point is, any underused, boring characters that they had no intention of giving any shine or even using that much in Boruto, like Kiba, Tenten, they should have potentially axed off, because it would have just grounded the show a lot more, made it much more serious, like anyone could potentially die. But that's just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think. Like, what characters would you have been okay with dying that maybe would have just given the show just so much more weight to it? Anyways, next up is Kaguya's arrival. I feel like this doesn't need to be explained too heavily, but in essence, I hate this character, and I hate this plot twist of getting rid of Madara as the main villain in the war. I personally lost all interest at this point. When Zetsu stabbed Madara and then this whole thing was revealed, I just literally didn't care. I kept pushing through simply because I spent so much time on Naruto, but without a doubt, I definitely was highly less invested once Madara was gone. But moving on, one of the last things I personally just had a gripe about that I didn't really think made sense or like at all was Kakashi getting the magic double Sharingans. To me, that just seemed like a complete assball and just seemed so weird. And I know some people are probably thinking, in Naruto, there's a lot of things that could potentially be an assball. And that is true. However, I just felt like this was just a bit too weird. For example, we already got used to people being able to pluck out people's eyeballs instantly, which is crazy enough as it is. Because initially, someone had to actually medically move over the eyeballs, but that was retconned. But to now have the spirit of Obito giving him Sharingan Dojutsu powers from heaven, to me, that was just too much of a big stretch. You know what I mean? But maybe that's just me. Another one I know a lot of people may dislike, which I personally am really fine with, is some people hate the sexy jutsu being used to defeat Kaguya. But to be honest, I thought it was a nice, funny callback to one of the staple jutsus in the series for Naruto. It was just interesting that that would have been the jutsu to use that really caught her off guard. I personally think it was like a good payoff. You know what I mean? It felt like before now, the sexy jutsu was just used as like a little gag here and there. But for it now to be used in such a fundamental way to really help win the battle, I thought that was a very, very nice touch. Goofy or not, I feel like it was excellent. But with that being said, in an ideal world, Kaguya wouldn't even exist, so this probably wouldn't have happened. But overall, when it comes to the war arc, I don't hate everything. There are some parts I really like. The build up to Madara I thought was incredible. Obviously, we've been hearing about Madara for ages, so when he comes on screen, we really want that badass to show up. And he surely does. He comes on screen, breaks out a massive can of whoop ass, and starts destroying a lot of the allied shinobis, then breaks out this huge, massive fireball jutsu that multiple shinobis have to gang together just to try and combat it. Overall, I think the introduction of Madara was exceptional. There's other parts in the war I actually do enjoy, such as the build up to the Obito face reveal, Kakashi trying to decipher who Obito is, and especially right before it's fully shown, where Kakashi's having thoughts of it, and even my guy chimes in thinking, I know what you're thinking, but stick to the job at hand. I thought that was really good, but I will say I much preferred Toby than Obito, because once Obito's face is revealed, the mystery is kind of gone and he's not as intriguing as a character. I'll make a new video on that, but overall, there are good and bad points of this arc. Ultimately, it comes down to the individual. As a whole, I'd say it probably wasn't my favorite arc, but there are definitely some redeeming factors that make it good. For example, for me, just seeing Madara and his awesome jutsus and his battle prowess in action and not in a flashback, for me was very, very good. So to me, the war arc, if we could have just got rid of the Kaguya mess, I personally would have been very, very happy with it. But anyways, let me know what you thought in regards to the war. Did you really like the arc? Did you find it perfect? Or what things would you have written to adjust it? Feel free to put down your fan theories or what change you would make, and I'll read through